This is the Small Town Big Talk Show, the only place where you can listen in on real life conversations about the challenges and the joys of living in a small town. I'm your host, Rebecca Undum, and each week a guest will join me as we tackle one topic that more than likely we're all feeling or have thought about, but of course, no one wants to talk about. Let's chat. My guest today is Jenny Rohrich. She's a fellow blogger. She is a mom to a 1-year-old and a farmer's wife. She lives in a small town not far from mine, and I had the pleasure of sitting down with Jenny in our local coffee shop. And Jenny and I talked about in this episode all things related to being who you really are, figuring out how to kind of discover your gifts, and then how in doing so your life can open up in ways to be more intentional, not just in terms of the things that come your way, but also the people that show up for you. And really listen in for some cool advice that Jenny has on two things. One, to maneuver social media in a graceful and honest way. And second, how to maneuver the very difficult situation that so many of my listeners, the listeners of this show, deal with, and that's being a transplant when you marry into your small town. So enjoy this chat with me and Jenny. Oh, I'm so excited you're here.
I'm here.
I know you're here. It's so awesome. Okay, so here's what I thought we'd talk about. So the chapters that'll go with, like the chapters from the book that'll go with this chat, it's kind of two things. And I think because you were in the Big Life Retreat and we kind of talked about both of these things, it'll be a good topic for us to jam on. So one was the idea of discovering my gifts, like becoming kind of aware. And it was in high school, granted, at the time. And I think I kind of said to you, like, I learned them and then I totally forgot them and just got uber focused on, like, how do I make money, right? Which is good because we have to make money. But then the second part of it right after that is, like, when I found my first nestie. So, you know, in the book I use the phrase nestie to describe, like, the person that belongs in the nest with you, those really close relationships. Another phrase to describe that is, like, a friendship that transcends category. So it's not mom friends and soccer mom friends and, like,
it's all around
church friends, right? The all around friend. So what has been your experience with either of those things? How do they connect? Like, we're just going to start there and see what happens. So
okay, so I feel like I have really just come into, like, accepted the person who I am recently, and that's kind of been, like, shook up when I became a mom a little over a year ago.
Yep.
And that was obviously challenging in a physical sense, but I think I was really surprised in how much it challenged me spiritually, emotionally, and mentally.
Right.
And that surprised me because it's like you bring this life into the world and suddenly you have to figure out how that fits into who you are and who you are in your marriage and who you are with your friends and all of the things. And it's so much more than just keeping a life alive. And
like his life alive.
Yeah, his
life.
Right. His life, keeping him alive.
Keeping your life alive.
Yes.
Too.
It's not just surviving it, but figuring out a way to thrive in it and to find joy in all of that. And that has really challenged me to push further into, what do I really want in life? What are my priorities in life? What am I naturally good at? Are there things in my life that I need to eliminate? And that's been kind of shocking to me, to sit back and realize all of these things that came along that I was not expecting. And so I feel like I've kind of been on this journey the past couple months where I have been figuring out all of those things. I've been figuring out, like, what are my priorities in life? And are they lining up with how I live my life? And having to pull back, like, what are some things, some stresses in my life that I don't need? And it was when I hit that moment, and actually I won a spot in the Big Life Retreat.
You did, sister.
And it was not on my radar at the time, and because I was just a couple months postpartum, and I told my husband, I said, look, I'm going to make time for this. So I sent my newer baby to my mother-in-law's for the night. I did not, like, put him down and try and get on. I said,
I'm so glad you did it that way.
Yes.
By the way.
I am too. I said, I need this time for me. And so I set it aside and I attended. And one of my big takeaways out of that was just learning to figure out what I need to say no to in life.
Yep.
And kind of this idea that has continually come back. It's like one of those things that like hits you in the face again and again and again, is that I'm just kind of in this season, this quiet season of preparation. And what does that look like? And a lot of it has been me simplifying my life and saying no to things and pulling back. And that's really hard because I feel like as women, especially, we want to say yes to everything. We feel extreme guilt to do things, especially in a small town where you're being asked to do a lot of different things and wear a lot of different hats and volunteer a lot of time. And that's not easy to say no to.
Pulling back on it is hard.
It is. It's really hard. But at the end of the day, I feel like I've finally come to a place where I can kind of let that guilt go because I know what my priorities are and I know what I want to focus on right now.
Right.
And a lot of that is, you know, our family. And I want to start with us so that we can show up and be that full strength self, like you say. And, and I'm realizing the more that I pour into doing that, I do show up better. And you know, motherhood is easier at times. My marriage is easier at times. You know, my interactions in our community, I just feel so much better because of it.
Right. So it's a couple things that you said I think is so interesting. So you become a mom. And motherhood is one of those, I don't want to say it's a label, but it's a very defining role for many of us. And suddenly it can be really overwhelming with all of the things that you think you should be doing. Like, what does an ideal mother look like? You know, and I mean, seriously, come on, just take to the internet and you can find any countless ways to be like this is the way to be a great mom. And really it's so much more about what you talked about. It's like, it's a self-discovery of like, what is the best way I can show up as a mom? Right? And
it's going to look different for everybody.
It is. And I think that's the whole thing of discovering gifts. So like in the book, I talk about the fact that early on, there were certain things that really lit me up. And it wasn't until I was searching for myself again, like post-college, post-start of a career where I'm like, this cannot be it. Where it was like, how do you figure out what you want to do? Well, what lit you up when you were younger? Like, what are the things that, you know, because if we're paying attention, some of that stuff is formed early on, right? Has that been your experience too? Like,
absolutely.
Did you feel like there was a time when you honored it more and then kind of lost it? What did that look like for you?
I definitely went through. So I have come to the realization that by nature I am a creative, is what I like to say. I'm a creative. So I struggle with and I'm a creative, and I'm also a rebel personality tendency. So like when somebody tells me like you should do X, I like want to run the other way. Like, I intrinsically, naturally, and my husband will 110% back. He's like the one that is like, yep, that's you. And he's learned that about me. And I will only do things if I want them to be. If somebody can convince me it's my idea, then I'll probably do it.
Nice.
And that's just, I've come to the realization that is who I am. So I struggle with really long-term planning things. I have struggled with a routine, like finding a routine, because I just feel like as a creative, I can get from point A to point B, but it's not linear. It's like boop, 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 boop. Like even just, I tried recently time blocking. That does not work for me at all.
Amen. But the thing is, like, that's just it. So this is, I love that we're talking about, well, this is going to, again, we're going to touch on a lot of things, but it's partly realizing that the best expert advice isn't necessarily gonna be like ring your bell. Like, oh, look at how scheduled and efficient I am now. Like, if you can get there with time blocking, amen, sister. Do the time blocking. But why do you think it didn't work for you? What was it about it?
Well, initially going into it, it felt constraining, but I just feel like I have to allow myself to go down rabbit trails at times in order for my productivity to continue.
And as a creative, it's an inspiration thing, right? Like if I'm supposed to do something at a certain set of time and I don't feel moved to do it, then it's not my best work, and then I don't feel so. And I've heard, I mean, I have a really good friend that's a copywriter, and she's just, for her, like, batching it just works. She likes to leave, and she has said, I like to leave some room for creativity because that's just how she works too. But for some people, it works. Like, I'm going to do it whether it's my best work or not. And like for me, I'm much more apt to be like, oh, if we're talking writing,
I have to have the inspiration,
me
and then
too.
I can batch all kinds of stuff.
Right,
but
right.
I might sit down and it's literally like the blinking icon,
and
you're
just like stare at it, like, and then you're like, what should I look at on the internet? Like, what should I? And then all of a sudden, you're like
down a rabbit trail,
right, searching in places that aren't, right.
But when I think about that in the context of me growing up, it's definitely something that I think was recognized early on. My mom has forever blackmail on me because I used to they gave me a karaoke machine one year for a Christmas present or birthday or whatever. Probably 5. And she has cassette tapes of me interviewing my baby brother and, doing this whole like talk show persona thing. I'm reading books on tape. Like, this is the things that I just naturally did.
Right. Like, this is what play looked like to you.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Very, very creative play. I mean, I think
so fun.
Play, we used to play, my brother and I used to play store a lot. So I would actually design forms on paper, and then my brother could come in and purchase things.
Right. Fill out your purchase order.
Yeah, that's exactly right. House was very, very elaborate. Like the stories behind it was always very elaborate. Whether and I'd always set it up like, here's the character you're going to be, and here's the character I'm going to be, and what do those roles look like?
We would have been really fun playmates because that's exactly how I played. Yeah, like my house was just not. It was not just house, like you said. It was characters, and it was like getting into a whole world. And super fun.
I grew up. My parents own a butcher shop in California, and that's what I grew up in. I worked for them, and for a long time throughout my high school years, that felt extremely constrained to me because it's very black and white. It's very science-based.
Right.
And I am not in that frame of mind. It's a lot of math, and not that I'm not good at those things.
But it's just not where, it's not your
what
gift.
Lights me on fire for that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't, so when time to go to college, and I was a general ed just in college for like 3 years because I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had no clue whatsoever. I knew that I wanted to do something in the creative world, but I couldn't justify in my mind like, hey, you should send me to school to be an artist because that's not a selling
pay for
point.
This giant education, and I'm going to make
that's
art.
Not a selling point. So I ended up by chance in the interior design department at Chico State University, is where I went. I stayed close to home, went to college in the town I grew up in.
Yep.
Very safe. And I ended up being very naturally good at putting things together and space planning and all of that. I enjoyed my major. I loved the people that I got to interact with. And I love seeing some of them that have built these awesome independent businesses in interior design.
Yep.
Then I graduated the year that the housing market crashed.
Ugh.
And
that was like the year we moved here.
Yeah, I was like, what do you do? What do you do? I have this big fancy interior design degree.
Right.
And I really wasn't sold on, moving into San Francisco or Los Angeles and working at a corporate firm in a corporate office, because obviously that's the rebel personality in me. I'm just like, I don't know if that jives with me. So I ended up going back to work for my parents and just kind of figuring out what it was that I wanted to do. And I went through a period of my life, both personally and I guess you would say professionally, where I totally abandoned all of that creative stuff. I didn't do a lot of things that were creative. I just was kind of living. And those were, without a doubt, the darkest years of my life. And I ended up coming out of it feeling very lost and like I was drowning and I didn't know who I was. And it was when I started removing myself from what I was doing and really pursuing, like I picked up a camera and I dove deep into photography and completely self-taught photographer on all of that. And then I also figured out that I had a friend who started social media stuff, and she's like, you need to get on social media and start talking about like butcher shops and meat. She's like, nobody's really there doing that. And so I started a blog for my parents. So I started writing and taking pictures of what was going on, and just really took to all of that. And it was when all of that kind of came together is when I found my husband through Twitter.
Yeah.
And I ended up in North Dakota, and it all put me in the place where I am now.
Right. Which is like, what is it? What does it look like? Because like you just said, you feel like the last, year, because it's having a baby and like kind of the rediscovering yourself.
Yes.
So are there ways that you intentionally foster creativity? Like, is that like an intention that you place on every single day, or is there a mindfulness about like making sure that you stay in a creative place? You know what I mean? Just to bring some intention into your life so that you don't slip back into that place where you just forget yourself.
Absolutely.
I think it happens to all of us. I really do think it happens to all of us, especially once you add a child, even one child into the mix, because it just overtakes so much of your...
Social media has been huge for me, and also just having an outlet where I can share things that are on my mind, things I'm struggling with, vulnerabilities I'm having. And I've come to realize the huge benefit of that, because it may not be for everybody. I've definitely learned that. But for the people that it's for, it means the world to them, and it makes all the difference. And so I've been fortunate in that I've allowed myself to share a lot. And when I probably like pull back and look at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I get pretty personal about things. But that's where I feel like my creativity thrives, and that's where it just kind of flows out. Like, it's not forced. When I sit down and I want to write a post about, something that I'm struggling through right now, it just comes. It naturally just comes out.
So that segues into Nesty, the whole thing about Nesties, and we talked about that in the Big Life Retreat too, right? We did like the idea of a relationship detox, right? So you get clear on who you are, and you're creative. You know that you lend the best version of yourself comes forward when you're lending that in a creative way. So then you start looking at all of the things you've said yes to through that filter of like, does this allow me to show up in my best way? You just touched on this. I think this also affects how we show up in relationships, right? So if we're not anything other than our realist, most authentic self, then the whole premise of the relationship is fake sometimes, right? And I think balancing this out in social media, because let's just real quick, you're in a very small town in North Dakota. How many people live in your small town?
Around 700-ish.
Right. So very small town. I mean, that's a very small town. So let's talk a bit about relationships, because you just touched on it. Like, I think social media is a topic here. You talked about you have shared a lot. So when you think about, like, again, the people that are probably going to be watching this are people like you and me that are trying to live big in their small towns, right? They're small town women. What have you experienced with relationships? So you touched on social media a bit. You said it worked for you. Has it ever backfired for you is one question I have. Like, has it ever backfired? And then what about just the physical dynamics? Like, you and I are actually sitting in a coffee shop. There's people in my small town, like, in this coffee shop with us. How do those things fit together for you in your town of 700? So I gave you a few things to kind of talk about, but...
So I had I guess you would say, a following or a presence on an internet-based, social media-based way when I moved to town. And it was kind of funny because I still have it. One of the writers at the newspaper was like caught on to the fact that Mark and I met on social media, and Mark is my husband, by the way.
Yes. Yep.
I don't know if I've said his name. That we met on social media, and he wanted to interview me, and I was kind of like, okay, like, cool. So we had this big interview about how we met, and I was moving to town, and little did I know that it was going to, it was literally front center page picture, me and Mark. And before I met Mark, I'm naturally a brunette, like a darker brunette, and I had just dyed my hair like fire red. So there's a picture of a young woman, which the county that I live in, the median age is around 56.
I love that you know the median age of your county. I don't know the median age of
our
Dickey
county is the oldest, most elderly per capita in the United States.
In the entire United States? Mm-hmm. What a fun fact.
Well, at the last census it was. So I don't know if it's changed.
Fair enough. I don't have a fact checker.
I'm very fortunate that there are a lot of young people that have moved back since I have moved to town.
Right.
And the culture and the whole demographics of our town is changing.
Shifting.
We're kind of in a growing period right now,
cool.
and it's really exciting to see. The schools filling back up and classes and babies. I mean, we're in a baby boom right now, which is really cool.
Great. Yeah.
But anyways, so when I moved back to town, obviously for a while I was the girl on the front page of the newspaper because my stories, that's what I moved into.
And they were already talking about you, Jenny. But now you're also on the front page of the paper.
Right.
Wow.
But
that's a heck of an introduction.
so blessed. And it is absolutely a blessing because if anybody lives in a small town, I mean, you know the dynamics that can go on. But I was so blessed in that people caught on to what I had to say, my story, where I came from, and my life. And I would have, older ladies stopping me in the grocery store and being like, hey, I read one of your blogs and it was so nice to read that. And they had such nice things to say. And I think being somebody who is an outsider, I guess, to the community, in a very small, close-knit community, to be able to come in and to be welcomed in such a way and to have my true gifts and my true self embraced by so many people was absolutely amazing.
Because I don't think that's a lot of people's experience.
No.
Have you found that in women that you've talked to?
Yeah, I have found that. That is not a lot of people's experiences.
What do you attribute that to for you? Is it just like a perfect storm of factors? Like, is your small town, are they wired to be very welcoming to outsiders?
No, I don't think so.
So what the heck?
Some of them are.
How'd you crack this code? Because I do think this is something that I think there are people that feel like.
I do think it is a perfect storm of things, and I think I personally, and I don't know if this has anything to do with it or not, but I definitely come into situations and I try to be very objective. I try to understand, and this is true about all life situations, is that I've learned is I just really try to put myself in another person's shoes and see things from their perspective, because my reality is not the same as their reality,
right? And
they don't get my reality and I don't get their reality. And so if I can take time to wrap my mind around what is their reality, why are they displaying this behavior or saying these things, or why are these things happening, then I can better understand where they're coming from, and I can just give people a little more grace.
Right.
Because I think living in a small town, that is key.
Grace.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Lots of grace.
And lots of grace. I think, we've talked about this. You and I we've been on a heck of a topic train this morning. But I think that's the key to being a human on the planet.
Yes,
is
absolutely.
Giving yourself and other people lots of grace. Okay, so how about going back to social media? Have you ever had a moment or a time when being real and being vulnerable and being honest backfired? And by backfired, I simply mean that it became clear to you, it was revealed to you that the person or people you were sharing it with did not have the right.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, or maybe you had rented the space out without carefully filling out a rental contract.
There's been multiple times of that happening. I have a lot of friends that I have, I guess you would say in a way, mentored in social media journeys, and one of the number one things I tell them is you have to develop thick skin, and you have to really, really, really know, or at least be on a really good journey about who you are, what you truly believe and love, and not try to post about or share about something that is outside of that. Because when you get into that waters of unsure of how you really feel about something, or you don't truly have the passion behind it and you're just trying to pretend or do something, that can be very dangerous, and it will also, people will see right through that.
Right.
I think a lot of my personal negative experience on social media has been when I have been very honest about something that is a deep struggle, whether that be being a wife to a farmer and what that looks like. I mean, that is a whole you want to talk about like mommy bloggers or mommy issues, and like farm wife issues are like the most polarizing topics in the world.
It's so true. It's so true. And it feels that, and then it feels really lonely. Like, am I really the only person struggling with this? So okay, so I don't want to take it down my journey, but you had a struggle, and then so you said the times that it has been the worst for you was you shared a struggle, and then what happened?
I had a lot of people, in some cases, it's been a lot of people who may experience the same struggle, but either don't want to process through that, don't want to walk through it, and so they are, I guess in a lack of a better term, they're throwing stones at me because they want to stay in whatever life situation that they're in.
Don't make me confront my stuff, Jenny.
Yes.
I mean, that's ultimately what it is.
That or just the fact that may not be something that's not their experience.
It's
and that's
truly
not
their
life.
Experience, right. So then they decide to do what with it? Judge it? Yeah.
Yeah. Or, you know,
you got to get your shit together, girl.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, right?
Or
get it
somebody
together.
may be struggling more with something or something related, and they want to be like, your life is great.
They want to minimize your
they
pain.
want to minimize what I have gone through.
You just identified what I think are, they are the three potential outcomes. Or it's just and so this, you know, like again, I told you this whole shift to this talk show is not to be like, here's what we need to do, people. Right? It's not. This isn't about advice.
No.
But one of the things I think we all can and should think about more is seriously just any one of those reactions. Where's the reaction of just, I see you, I hear you, I'm in this with you.
I'm going to validate this for you.
Acceptance and honoring it doesn't mean it doesn't mean anything other than just I see you for what you're feeling.
And I may not understand anything you're going through,
right?
But I want to be
see
here
your
for
pain.
you.
I see your pain, and I care enough about you to hold it with you.
Yep.
And again, so that's like, to me, that is the definition. Like, that is a nestie. That's a role that only serves. And so that's the danger of social media, is that of course they're not all your nesties. So I think what you're saying is like developing a thick skin is really, really important if you're gonna go all in. And there's no other way to do social media. Like it can be facades all day long of like prettied up. This is what I want it to look like. This is what I think people are gonna like. And that's just going to get you a whole lot of fake. It's going to just attract a whole lot of false fake in your life. And who really needs that?
And it's been such a learning experience. And I actually just recently shared on my social media not that long ago that I remember after I had Levi, a couple months into it, I had a woman message me on Instagram because I
feel like I commented on this one. Go ahead, and I think if I know what you're going to say.
You know, I just had a cute, adorable, brand new baby boy, so I'm
kind of became your world.
I'm spamming the world with baby pictures, and she had very kindly decided that she wanted to message me and tell me that she was going to unfollow me because I'm a mom and she doesn't relate with that, and that's all I'm going to be posting about. And I just was it didn't, at the moment of it happening, it didn't hit me hard. Like I wasn't upset about it or whatever. I was just kind of like, okay, you know, that's fine. It's not for her. But that comment like nestled itself in my subconscious.
Sure.
And so I would find myself like weeks after that being like, oh, I've already posted 2 pictures of Levi this week, which is my son. I can't post anymore.
So crappy.
And then I pulled back and I was like, wait a minute.
Right.
What are you even doing?
Right.
And
like
the most
second guessing how to be Jenny
is that,
right.
The most amazing thing is that when I shared about this whole experience on my social media, I think it was last week, I had more non-mom followers message me and be like, please don't ever stop sharing about this, because even though we are not moms and we want to, you know, hopefully have children on the line, what you have to say and the realism, the real life stuff that you bring to the table is what makes us want to be moms and is what is going to help us through that time.
Yeah, when the time comes.
When the time comes.
Right.
And that was like amazing to me, because it wasn't the, you know, the people that have children. Obviously there was a lot, but it wasn't all of them coming to support me and sharing about being a mom. It was the people outside of that. And so that really kind of opened my eyes to the fact that, you know, even though there are people that maybe can't relate, like you were saying, they can't relate with what I'm going through, they're still coming alongside me and being like, hey, we see you in this, and we want to let you know that, you know, what you're doing is making a difference.
Right. I talk, so I was in Beach, North Dakota this past weekend, and I was talking to this amazing group of women. And one of the things we talked about was like, if you share your pain and they say, at least, well, at least you fill in the blank, or you celebrate a win and they say, wow, must be nice. Yes. Those are not your people. Like, and again, like, you might see them, you might meet them physically in your town or in your space. They might be real people in your physical life. They might be people on social media. The point is, they're not your people. And so we all have to make a decision about how much weight we want to give to all of those opinions. Because if you're going to put yourself out there in any real way, like, and that's like my whole message of living big isn't about being a blogger or doing this or being on stage. It's not about this. It's the size is not about what it is that you're doing, right? It's about the way you're choosing to show up in your own life for you and for the people you care about, right? And that is key. Like, recognizing that if everybody loves everything that we do, then how authentic and real are we really being? And just like you said, think about what it is that you love. Think about what it is that you care about and share those things. And if it falls outside of that, then it's not really you, and what they're connecting with isn't really you, and it's not going to last anyway.
And it's been kind of interesting as I'm thinking about, you know, and I went into this whole big life retreat and like living big in a small town, which makes it seem like, you know, I should have some sort of overreaching, like huge like, thing, like I want to build this or do this or whatever, when honestly my thing of living big in my small town was pulling back and simplifying my life, which is totally counterintuitive
to what you think, right?
But
to what you think it's about.
But what I've learned out of the beginning of hashing through that pattern and going through that and doing all of that has been that I've actually come into living bigger and being more true to myself, and just realizing, just having this I was telling one of my very good friends the other day that I'm kind of in a season right now where I've done a lot of cool things. I've traveled, I've done some speaking, I've done a lot of writing, I've done sponsored things, I've worked with brands, and I'm kind of in this season right now where I'm kind of like, I don't know what's next. I don't know what's coming. I don't know what I'm going to do. And a part of me, before I came into the Big Life Retreat, was freaking out about that. Like, what does this look like? What am I going to do? What's going to happen? And lately, I just feel like it's been one of those things, like I said earlier, that it just keeps coming around. The message keeps, and through like 5 different sources, like 5 different things, that the message that I want to say absolutely without a doubt that God has put in front of me right now is I just need to like be still and listen and not worry about what's coming next, because He's preparing me for whatever it is that He's brewing up. And I know that whatever that is going to be way bigger than what I could ever create and force. And
that's it.
And so I've just really come to terms lately with the fact that it's all going to be okay.
I know, and it's like so cliche, but there's nothing cliche about it.
No,
because the best things in my life have never come from me forcing it. I don't know if you feel that way. Like, like you met your husband on Twitter. Pretty sure that wasn't a forced event, you know. No. And so I think I just think, I think that's so awesome.
It is. It's a really good, it's a scary place when you think about it, when you pull back,
It's like
and
a
you're
trust.
like,
It's a trust.
It's don't know what I'm going to do.
Relinquishing control.
Yes, absolutely. But there's a part of me, like, deep down inside that is just like, just keep staying your course. Keep putting one foot in front of the other. Keep sharing.
Yeah.
I will give you what you need to share about, and
Right.
you will just intrinsically know what it is that you need to share about, and just keep doing, because all of this is this, I call it my quiet season of preparation.
Yeah. Oh, it's awesome. And I think, going, like, the overarching theme here is about our gifts. And as long as we really think about what it is that we value, and we think about how we show up best, and we do everything we can to both honor that, I think, and cultivate it, the right opportunities will come our way, as well as the people to support us in that journey, right? The friends and the support that we really need.
Yep.
But you can't fake your way into any of it.
No. And it's just been amazing and I'm just so thankful that I have gone down this journey and, like, come down this path at, the age I'm at, a fairly young person,
Right.
a fairly,
Young mom.
young mom, because I'm so thankful, because I look around at, people in my life and on social media, and just the burdened, exhausted, over poured out of her cup person is a lot.
Kind of over everything, right? Like, people overanalyze, people overcommit, people I mean, seriously, it's like it's too much.
Yeah.
It's too much.
Like, I tell people, and I've written on social media, I've blogged, like, simplifying my life has changed my life and actually given me more time.
Right.
Even though I still have the same amount of hours. Actually, I have probably less hours in a day, because I now have to care for a child.
Right.
It's been absolutely amazing.
This has been such a fun chat.
Yes,
I am
has.
so thankful. Thank you for coming down and visiting.
Yeah, on this snowy day.
I know, on this snowy day. Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you.